Jake Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he walked through the alien city. The buildings around him looked like giant crystals growing from the ground. Purple light came from inside them. The air smelled like metal and flowers mixed together. He was on planet Xerion, home to the Zaracti people. This was his first time meeting aliens. Jake worked as a diplomat for Earth. His job was to make friends with new species. But the Zaracti made him nervous. They were tall and thin, with blue skin that had silver marks on it. Their eyes glowed yellow in the dark. They moved like dancers, smooth and fast. Jake felt clumsy next to them. "Remember, Jake," Captain Lisa Rodriguez had told him before he left the ship. "These people are warriors. They respect strength. Don't show fear." Jake tried to walk with confidence. He wore his best uniform. The medal on his chest showed he had been a soldier before becoming a diplomat. He hoped that would help. The meeting place was a huge building in the center of the city. Guards stood at the entrance. They carried weapons that looked like swords, but energy glowed along the edges. The guards watched Jake with cold eyes as he passed. Inside, the room was bigger than a football field. The ceiling was so high Jake could barely see it. Zaracti nobles sat on floating platforms around the walls. They all stared down at him. The far end sat Elder Corvash. He was the oldest Zaracti alive. His skin was darker blue than the others, and scars covered his arms. Next to him stood a female Zaracti, who made Jake's breath catch. Lady Vexandra was beautiful in a dangerous way. She was tall and strong, with muscles that showed through her tight clothes. A sword hung at her side. The weapon had strange marks carved into it. The marks seemed to move when Jake wasn't looking directly at them. "Welcome, human," Elder Corvash said. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "I am told your people wish to trade with us." Jake stepped forward. He had practiced this speech many times. "Yes, honored elder. Earth offers friendship and trade. We have much to learn from each other." The elder nodded slowly. "Perhaps, but first you must understand our ways. This is our sacred hall. Many important decisions have been made here." Jake looked around the room. In the center was a round table made of black stone. Strange symbols were carved deep into its surface. They looked like the marks on Vexandra's sword. "That table has been here for 1,000 years, the elder explained. "Only clan leaders may touch it. The symbols hold great power." Jake nodded. He kept his hands at his sides. The last thing he wanted was to break their rules. The meeting went well at first. The Zaracti asked about Earth's resources. Jake told them about human technology. Trade seemed possible, but then Elder Corvash stood up. "Before we can trust you, you must show respect for our traditions. Come, touch the sacred table, swear an oath of friendship." Jake walked to the table. The symbols carved into it seemed to pulse with their own light. He reached out his hand, then stopped. Something felt wrong. "Is there a special way to do this?" he asked. "Just place your palm on the center symbol," Vexandra said. Her voice was smooth like silk, but Jake heard steel underneath. Jake pressed his hand to the stone. The moment his skin touched it, the symbol blazed with bright white light. The light spread to all the other symbols. The whole table glowed like a star. The Zaracti gasped. Some jumped to their feet. Others stepped backward. Vexandra's eyes went wide with shock. "Impossible," Elder Corvash whispered. Jake pulled his hand away. The light faded, but he could still feel tingling in his fingers. "Did I do something wrong?" Vexandra's face changed from surprise to anger. Her hand moved to her sword. "You dare mock our sacred traditions?" "I don't understand," Jake said. "What just happened?" "The table only glows for those chosen by the ancient powers," Elder Corvash said slowly. "But you are just a human, a weak creature from a backward world." "The table is broken," Vexandra declared. "This alien has contaminated it with his touch." She drew her sword. The runes on the blade started to glow. "I challenge you to combat, human. You have insulted our sacred ways." Jake's heart raced. He had no idea what he had done wrong. The table had just lit up when he touched it. "Lady Vexandra, I meant no insult. If I've done something wrong, I apologize. Apologies are for the weak, she said. You will face me in the sacred circle. Tomorrow at dawn. What if I refuse? Elder Corvash's eyes grew cold. Then we will assume all humans are cowards. Your ship will leave our space and never return. Any human vessel that enters our territory will be destroyed. Jake thought about Captain Rodriguez waiting on the ship, about the crew counting on him to make this mission work, about the war that might start if this went badly. I accept your challenge, he said. The room erupted in excited chatter. Vexandra smiled, showing sharp teeth. Good. At least you have some courage. It will make your defeat more interesting. She walked closer to Jake. Up close, he could see the silver marks on her blue skin moved like living things. Her sword hummed with energy. I have never lost a duel, she whispered. Your blood will water the sacred ground tomorrow. Jake met her glowing eyes. We'll see about that. As the meeting ended, Jake wondered what he had gotten himself into. The Zaraqti were clearly more dangerous than anyone on Earth realized, and tomorrow he would have to fight their champion with nothing but human skill against alien magic. The runes on Vexandra's sword pulsed brighter as she watched him leave. She was already planning how she would kill him. Jake sat in his room on the human ship staring at his hands. They still tingled from touching the sacred table. He couldn't stop thinking about how the symbols had blazed with light. A knock came at his door. Come in, he called. Dr. Amy Walsh entered, carrying a tablet computer. She was the ship's expert on alien cultures and old civilizations. Her brown hair was messy and her eyes were wide with excitement. Jake, I've been studying recordings from today's meeting. What happened when you touched that table was incredible. Incredible isn't the word I'd use, Jake said. I'm going to fight their champion tomorrow. She'll probably kill me. Amy sat down across from him. That's what I want to talk about. I've been comparing the symbols on that table to things we've found on Earth. Look at this. She showed him her tablet. On the screen were photos of ancient stone carvings from caves around the world. The symbols looked exactly like the ones Jake had seen on the Zaraqti table. These are from Egypt, Peru, and China, Amy said. All of them are thousands of years old, much older than any known civilization should have been able to make them. Jake leaned forward. You're saying humans made these symbols before? Not just humans. Advanced humans. People who knew things we've forgotten. Amy swiped to another image. I found more symbols like this in files from archaeological digs on Mars and the Moon. Old colonies that failed long ago. What are you trying to tell me? I think humans have been to the stars before. A long time ago we had technology, and knowledge that we lost. Maybe the Zaraqti found some of our old sites and learned from them. Commander Peter Hayes walked into the room. He was an older man with gray hair and scars on his face from many battles. Jake had served under him in the military before becoming a diplomat. I heard about your situation, Peter said. I came to help you prepare. Jake stood up. Peter, I don't know how to fight someone with a magic sword. Magic is just science we don't understand yet, Peter replied. Amy, show me those symbols again. Amy displayed the images. Peter studied them carefully. I've seen writing like this before, in classified files from deep space exploration, places where we found ruins but couldn't explain who built them. You think humans built them? Jake asked. I think humans built a lot more than we remember, Peter said. But right now we need to keep you alive tomorrow. Tell me about this, Vexandra. Jake described the duel challenge and how confident the Zaraqti woman had seemed. Peter listened without speaking. She's never lost a fight, Jake finished. Her sword glows with energy. I saw her move and she's faster than any human could be. Maybe, Peter said, but you have something she doesn't expect. What's that? You made their sacred table light up. That's never happened with an outsider before. There's something special about you, Jake. Something connected to those old symbols. Meanwhile, on the planet below, Vexandra trained in her private chambers. She swung her glowing sword through complex patterns. The weapon hummed as it cut through the air. Where the blade passed, small sparks of energy lingered. Her trainer, warrior priest Thexlar, watched from the corner. He was ancient even by Zarakti standards. His skin was so dark blue it was almost black, and ritual scars covered his arms. "You seem troubled, my lady," he said. Vexandra stopped her practice. Sweat gleamed on her blue skin. The human made the sacred table glow. "How is that possible? I do not know. In all my years I have seen it respond only to those chosen by the ancient powers. But this Jake Miller is just a primitive creature from a young world." "What if he's not?" Vexandra asked. "What if there's something we don't understand about his people?" Thexler moved closer. The priest's robes he wore were covered in the same glowing symbols as her sword. The old records speak of the first ones, the beings who left behind the sacred sites where we learned our power. They vanished long ago. "You think the humans are connected to them?" "It seems impossible. But the table does not lie." Vexandra raised her sword again. The runes along its edge pulsed brighter. "Then I will cut the truth from his flesh tomorrow." Back on the ship, Jake practiced with a simple metal sword. Peter watched him move, calling out corrections. "Keep your guard up. She'll be faster than you, so you need to be smarter. Use your environment. Make her come to you." Jake swung the blade in wide arcs. It felt heavy and clumsy compared to what he'd seen Vexandra carry. "This isn't going to be enough, is it?" "Maybe not," Peter admitted. "But Amy might be onto something. Those symbols responding to you means there's a connection we don't understand yet." Amy looked up from her tablet. "I've found something else. The Zarakti don't just use those symbols for decoration, they're a power source. The runes on their weapons and buildings tap into some kind of energy field." "What kind of energy?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure, but if you're connected to the same source..." Amy trailed off, thinking. "You think I could use their magic?" Jake laughed. "I'm just a regular human, Amy. I don't have any special powers." "Maybe you do and just don't know it," she replied. "Those symbols have been on Earth for thousands of years. What if some humans still carry the genetic memory of how to use them?" Peter nodded slowly. "It would explain why the table reacted to you. Your ancestors might have built it." Jake sat down hard in a chair. The idea was too big to believe. "So, you're saying I might be able to fight magic with magic?" "I'm saying you should be ready for anything tomorrow," Amy said. "Something is going to happen when you face Vexandra. I can feel it." That night Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the glowing symbols and what Amy had discovered. Were humans really more than they seemed? Had they once been masters of the galaxy? He looked out the window at the alien city below. Tomorrow he would fight for his life in their sacred arena. Win or lose, something told him the galaxy would never be the same again. In her chambers, Vexandra also lay awake. She polished her sword until the runes gleamed. Tomorrow she would prove that the Zarakti were the strongest warriors in space. No primitive human could challenge their power. But deep down, a small voice whispered that she might be wrong. The sun rose red over the Zarakti city. Jake stood at the edge of the sacred arena, watching thousands of aliens fill the stone seats around the fighting circle. Their yellow eyes glowed in the morning light. The crowd buzzed with excitement. The arena was carved from black rock, just like the sacred table. Symbols covered every surface. They seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Jake felt something stir in his chest when he looked at them. General Kyle Brooks stood beside him, recording everything for Earth Command. "You don't have to do this, Jake. We could call in the fleet." "And start a war?" Jake shook his head. "No, this is the only way." Tech specialist Ryan Clark held a scanner, checking energy readings around the arena. "The power levels here are off the charts. Whatever makes those symbols glow is incredibly strong." Jake wore simple combat armor and carried a basic metal sword. Next to the Zarakti weapons, it looked like a toy, but it was all he had. Across the arena, Vexandra appeared. The crowd roared when they saw her. She wore silver armor that hugged, her body like a second skin. Her sword was strapped to her back. Even from a distance, Jake could see the runes glowing on its blade. She walked to the center of the fighting circle with fluid grace. Every step looked like part of a dance. When she drew her weapon, sparks of energy danced along its edge. Elder Corvash's voice echoed from speakers hidden in the arena walls. Citizens of the clan, today we witness sacred combat. The human Jake Miller has insulted our traditions. Lady, Vexandra will restore our honor with his blood. The crowd cheered and stamped their feet. The sound was deafening. Jake walked to meet Vexandra in the center. Up close, her sword was even more impressive. The runes seemed to move and shift like living things. Power hummed in the air around her. Last chance to surrender, human, she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with battle fever. I might let you live if you beg. Jake raised his simple sword. I'm not much for begging. She smiled, showing sharp teeth. Good. I prefer my victories to mean something. Elder Corvash raised his staff. Let the duel begin. Vexandra moved like lightning. One moment she was 5 feet away, the next her glowing blade was inches from Jake's throat. He threw himself backward, barely avoiding the strike. The crowd gasped at her speed. Jake had known she would be fast, but this was beyond anything human. She attacked again, her sword leaving trails of light in the air. Jake blocked desperately with his metal blade. When the weapons met, sparks flew. The force of her blow nearly knocked the sword from his hands. Is this all humans can do? She called out, spinning her blade in complex patterns. I expected more from a species that dares travel the stars. Jake said nothing. He needed all his breath for staying alive. She was toying with him, showing off for the crowd. But even her casual swings had power that made his arms ache. She leaped high into the air, bringing her sword down like a falling star. Jake rolled aside. Her blade struck the stone floor and cut a deep groove in the solid rock. The crowd cheered wildly. Some threw flowers into the arena. This was going exactly as they had expected. Jake tried to attack, but Vexandra flowed around, his strikes like water. Her sword moved so fast it was hard to see. She could have killed him a dozen times already. You fight like an old man, she taunted. Where is the warrior spirit your kind is supposed to have? She increased her speed. Now Jake was fighting just to survive each second. His sword felt heavier with every block. Sweat stung his eyes. His muscles burned with effort. Vexandra's blade caught him across the shoulder. The cut wasn't deep, but it drew blood. The crowd screamed approval. First blood to the champion, Elder Corvash announced. Jake stumbled backward, pressing his hand to the wound. When he pulled it away, his palm was red with blood. Soon you will join your ancestors, Vexandra said. She held her sword high. The runes blazed brighter than ever. But first, you must be marked for death. This was a Zarakti tradition Jake had read about. Before the killing blow, the winner would cut their opponent's palm. It was a sign of ownership, claiming the defeated warrior's spirit. Vexandra moved forward with deadly purpose. Jake tried to defend himself, but her blade slipped past his guard. The glowing edge sliced across his left palm. Pain shot up his arm. Blood flowed freely from the cut. But something else happened too. When Jake's blood hit the arena floor, the symbols carved into the stone began to glow. Softly at first, then brighter and brighter. Vexandra stepped back in surprise. What trickery is this? The glow spread outward, from where Jake's blood had fallen. Soon the entire arena was blazing with light. The symbols on the walls, the floor, even the seats where the crowd sat, all came alive with power. Jake felt something awakening inside him. The same tingling he had experienced when touching the sacred table, but 1,000 times stronger. It was like electricity running through his veins. Impossible, Elder Corvash whispered. Priestess Nixella, Vexandra's sister, leaned forward, in her seat. Unlike the others, she didn't look afraid. She looked amazed. The prophecies, she breathed. The return of the first ones. The crowd had gone silent. Thousands of yellow eyes stared at Jake in shock and growing fear. Some of the Zarakti began to back toward the exits. Jake looked at his bleeding palm. The cut was still there, but now, it glowed with the same light as the arena symbols. He could feel power building inside him like pressure behind a dam. Vexandra raised her sword again, but her hands shook. "You are using forbidden magic. This is not possible for a human." "Don't understand it either," Jake said. His voice sounded different now, stronger. But something is happening. The runes on Vexandra's sword flickered. For the first time in her life, her weapon's power seemed weak compared to the energy filling the arena. "Fight me," she screamed. "Fight me with honor." But Jake was no longer the same man who had entered the circle. The blood of his ancestors sang in his veins. Memories that weren't his own flashed through his mind. Images of humans traveling between stars, building great cities, teaching younger races the secrets of power. The Zaraqti had learned their magic from ruins left by his people. They were using human knowledge against a human. And now, that knowledge was coming home. The arena blazed with light so bright that many Zaraqti covered their eyes. Jake stood in the center, his bleeding palm glowing like a small sun. Power flowed through him in waves he could barely control. Engineer Sophie Turner watched from the ship's observation deck. Her instruments were going crazy. "Captain Rodriguez, you need to see this. The energy readings are beyond anything we've ever recorded." On the ship's bridge, Captain Lisa Rodriguez stared at the screen showing the arena. "What's happening down there?" "I don't know," Sophie said. "But Jake is putting out more power than our entire reactor." In the arena, Vexandra backed away from Jake. Her sword, which had seemed so mighty before, now flickered weakly. The runes on its blade were dim compared to the symbols blazing all around them. "This cannot be," she whispered. "You are just a primitive creature. Your people barely know how to leave their own world." Jake looked at his hands. Symbols were appearing on his skin, glowing brighter with each heartbeat. They looked just like the ones carved into the arena floor. "I'm starting to remember things," he said. "Things that aren't my memories." In the crowd, Oracle Zethmos struggled to his feet. He was the oldest living Zaraqti, keeper of the most ancient stories. His voice cracked with age and fear. "The prophecy speaks of this day, when the blood of the first ones returns to the sacred ground." Elder Korvash turned to the oracle. "What prophecy? Speak clearly, Old One." "Long ago, before our clan learned the power of the runes, we found great cities in the void between stars, empty cities with technology beyond our understanding. We thought the builders had died out, but the oldest records say they would return one day to reclaim what was theirs." Jake felt memories flooding his mind. Not his own memories, but those of his ancestors. Humans who had traveled the galaxy when Earth was young. They had built wonders on 1,000 worlds. They had taught younger races, including the Zaraqti, how to use the power that flowed through all things. But something had gone wrong. A great war, cities burning, ships falling from the sky. The survivors had fled to a single world to hide and recover. Over time, they forgot who they had been. They became simple humans on a planet called Earth. "We taught you," Jake said, his voice strange and distant. "My people showed yours how to read the symbols, how to draw power from the cosmic flow. You learned from our ruins." Vexandra raised her sword with shaking hands. "Lies. The Zaraqti are the chosen ones. We alone possess the sacred knowledge." "You borrowed it," Jake replied. The symbols on his skin pulsed brighter. "And now it's time to give it back." He reached out his hand toward her sword. The weapon began to shake in her grip. The runes on its blade flickered and went dark. Without the power flowing through it, the sword was just metal. The crowd gasped in horror. Vexandra's weapon had never failed her before. She was defenseless. But Jake wasn't trying to hurt her. Something deeper was happening. All around the arena, Zaraqti began to feel strange. Their legs grew weak. Their hearts pounded with a rhythm they didn't understand. Colonel Frank Martinez was watching from the human ship. "Captain, we're picking up biological changes in the alien population. Their brain activity is spiking." "What does that mean?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "I think they're remembering something buried deep in their genetic code." In the arena, the first Zaraqti fell to his knees. Then another, Soon dozens, then hundreds of the proud warrior race were kneeling toward Jake. They couldn't help themselves. Something in their deepest instincts recognized him. "No," Bexandra said, fighting against the urge to kneel. "I will not bow to anyone." But, even as she spoke, her knees began to shake. The memory buried in her genes was stronger than her pride. Her people had once served the first ones willingly. They had been grateful students, not conquerors. Elder Corvash was among the first to fully kneel. Tears ran down his ancient face. "Forgive us, First One. We did not know. We thought you had abandoned the galaxy forever." Jake helped him stand. The power flowing through him was incredible, but he was still himself, still the diplomat who wanted to make peace. "You did nothing wrong. You preserved what we left behind. You kept it safe until we could return." More memories came flooding back. Not just of the ancient humans, but of the bond they had shared with the Zaracti. The aliens hadn't stolen human knowledge. They had been given it freely, trusted to guard it during humanity's long exile. Bexandra was the last to kneel. She fought against it with all her strength, but finally her legs gave out. "I don't understand," she said. "How can this be possible?" Jake knelt beside her. "Your ancestors served mine willingly, not as slaves but as friends, partners in building something greater than either species could achieve alone." "But the legends say the first ones were gods," she whispered. "We were just people who had learned to use the power that flows through all things. The same power you've been using all along." Jake showed her the symbols glowing on his skin. "It was always human knowledge. Your people just kept it safe for us." On the ship, Dr. Amy Walsh was putting the pieces together. "Captain, I think I know what's happening. The Zaracti didn't develop their technology independently. They found it in human ruins and learned to copy it. But they never fully understood it. And now they do? Now they remember. Their genetic memory is awakening. They remember serving humanity willingly, long ago." In the arena, the crowd of thousands had all knelt. The proud warrior race that had dominated local space for centuries was bowing to a single human. But it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like coming home. Jake stood and addressed the crowd. "We don't want to rule you. We want to be partners, again like our ancestors were. Together we can reclaim the galaxy that was lost." Elder Corvash spoke for his people. "What do you ask of us, First One?" "Just friendship," Jake said, "and help. There are others out there who need to remember what they've forgotten. Other races that learned from our ruins. It's time to bring the family back together." Bexandra looked at her darkened sword. "What about our honor? Our pride as warriors?" Jake smiled. "You'll need that pride. The galaxy is a dangerous place. We'll need the strongest warriors we can find." Her sword suddenly blazed back to life, brighter than ever before. But now she understood what the light truly meant. It was human knowledge, freely given to her ancestors and now returned to its proper place. The age of humanity's return had begun. 3 months later, Ambassador Helen Carter stepped off the shuttle onto the Zaracti homeworld. The city looked different now. Human and Zaracti engineers worked side by side, building new structures that combined both technologies. "Welcome to Zerion," Jake said, greeting her at the landing pad. He wore robes similar to the Zaracti priests, but with human modifications. The symbols on his arms glowed softly in the afternoon light. "Jake, you look different," Helen observed. "Older, wiser maybe." "I feel different. Learning to use the ancient knowledge changes you." Jake gestured toward the city. "But look what we've accomplished together." They walked through streets filled with both species. Human children played games with young Zaracti. Scientists from both races shared ideas in laboratories that buzzed with activity. "The Council on Earth is impressed," Helen said. "But they're also worried. Some people fear that humanity is changing too fast." Jake nodded. "I understand their concerns, but we can't go backward. Too many people are starting to remember." In the past months, more humans had experienced awakenings like Jake's. Not all of them, but enough to know that humanity's ancient heritage was real. Dr. Amy Walsh led a team of researchers studying the phenomenon. They visited Amy's lab where she was examining artifacts from other worlds. Her team had found human ruins on dozens of planets, each one teaching them more about their lost civilization. The network was incredible, Amy explained to Helen. Our ancestors connected star systems across the galaxy. They didn't conquer worlds, they invited species to join them. And all of this was forgotten? Helen asked. Lost in the Great War that ended our first age among the stars? But the younger races kept pieces of our knowledge alive without understanding its true source. Young Zarakti Kekstar approached them. He was Vexandra's cousin and had become fascinated with human history. Ambassador Carter, we have discovered something important. There are other species nearby that show signs of using First One technology. Jake turned to him. How many? At least 12 within 50 light years. The Drakmari use energy shields based on our ancient designs. The Veltar have ships that travel faster than light using human principles. None of them know where their technology really came from. Helen felt overwhelmed. You're talking about rebuilding a galactic civilization. Not rebuilding, Jake corrected. Remembering. It was always there, scattered and hidden. We're just putting the pieces back together. They walked to the council chambers where Vexandra was training new recruits. Both human and Zarakti warriors learned together, sharing techniques that had been separated for millennia. The old ways failed, Vexandra said as she demonstrated a complex sword form. Human and Zarakti fighting apart are strong. Fighting together, we are unstoppable. She had changed since the duel. Her pride was still there, but tempered with wisdom. She understood now that true strength came from unity, not domination. Admiral. Scott Davis contacted them through a holographic communicator. He was planning humanity's expansion into space, but not as conquerors, as teachers and reconnectors. Jake, we've made contact with the Veltar. They're interested in trade agreements, but they want to meet you personally. Why me? Because when they learned about what happened in the arena, they started having their own awakenings. Their oldest shamans remember stories about the star. Teachers. They think you might be one of them. Jake sighed. The responsibility was enormous. Every day, more species remembered fragments of their connection to ancient humanity. They looked to him for guidance he wasn't sure he could provide. I'm just one person, he said. Vexandra placed a hand on his shoulder. You are not alone. The Zarakti stand with humanity as we should have all along. Helen watched the interaction. What about Earth? What about the people who don't want these changes? They'll have a choice, Jake said. No one will be forced to awaken. But those who choose to remember their heritage will help rebuild what we lost. Over the following weeks, ships arrived from across the local sector. Representatives from species that had lived with fragments of human knowledge for thousands of years. Each one brought pieces of the puzzle that had once been humanity's galactic civilization. The Drakmari brought energy technology. The Veltar shared their navigation systems. The Korthani had preserved human art and literature in their sacred vaults. Slowly, a picture emerged of what their ancestors had accomplished. It hadn't been an empire built on conquest. It had been a community of species working together, each contributing their strengths to the whole. Humanity had been the teachers and coordinators, but everyone had been partners. This is what we're rebuilding, Jake told the assembled delegates. Not human dominance, but cooperation. The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats out there that no single species can face alone. What threats? Asked the Drakmari representative. Jake accessed memories that weren't entirely his own. Ancient warnings passed down through genetic memory. The Devourers, machine intelligences that consume worlds. They ended our first age. They'll return eventually. A hush fell over the assembly. Even species that had forgotten humanity remembered. Legends of the Devourers. But that's a problem for the future, Jake continued. For now, we focus on reconnection, on remembering who we were and who we can be again. Vexandra stepped forward. The Zarakti pledge our fleets to this cause. We will help contact other species. We will defend those who cannot defend themselves. One by one, the other species made similar pledges. not to serve humanity, but to join with them in rebuilding their ancient alliance. Helen watched it all with wonder and some concern. Jake, this is bigger than anyone on Earth imagined. You're talking about changing the entire galaxy. The galaxy is already changing, he replied. We're just helping it remember what it forgot. Later, as the various delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Jake stood with Vexandra on the observation deck overlooking the city. Do you think we can really do it? He asked. Put it all back together after so long? Your ancestors did it before, she said. Built connections across impossible distances, united species that had never met. If they could do it, so can we. Jake looked at his hands where symbols still glowed faintly under his skin. The power was incredible, but it came with equally incredible responsibility. I never asked for this, he admitted. None of us did. But sometimes the galaxy chooses us anyway. Vexandra smiled. Besides, you're not the same person who came here for a diplomatic meeting. You're becoming what you were always meant to be. High above them, ships from a dozen worlds departed to spread the word. The age of reconnection had begun. Humanity was returning to the stars, not as conquerors, but as the teachers and coordinators they had always been meant to be. The galaxy was remembering its true history, and Jake Miller, former diplomat and awakened heir to humanity's legacy, would help guide it into a new golden age.